Let's go back to the phone lines. We'll talk next to Lonnie, listening in St. Louis, Missouri. Hi, Lonnie.
Hey, how you doing, Hank?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Great, thanks for taking my call. Hey, listen, I just had a question that I had a conversation with a good friend of mine at work, and we were talking about the rapture of the church, and I think David Jeremiah had a series on his show that I listened to. We were talking about it. It was basically we were just discussing the rapture, and my friend Al said that he thought that the Christians would still be here on Earth after the rapture, and that was something that David Jeremiah was kind of, it was basically the total opposite. He said that after the rapture, I think, if I'm not mistaken, all of the Christians would be caught up, whatever. And so I just wanted to hear your take on that.
Well, I've said this before on the Bible Answer Man broadcast, but the notion of a secret coming of Jesus Christ and therefore a pre-tribulational rapture is without biblical precedent. There's not a single passage in the whole of Scripture that speaks of Christ coming secretly to resurrect and rapture Christians for 7 years of heavenly bliss. And there's not even a collection of passages that can be construed to communicate a secret coming prior to the second coming of Jesus Christ. And in fact, the words of Jesus Christ negate that very notion. He said, "A time is coming when all who are in the graves will hear his voice and come out. Those who have done good will rise to live, and those who have done evil will rise to be condemned." So the literal sense of the Lord's words suggest a moment in the future when both the righteous and the unrighteous are going to be resurrected and judged together. The notion that believers are going to be raptured during a secret coming prior to the resurrection of unbelievers is an imposition on the text of Scripture. There's not anywhere in the biblical text a future 7-year tribulation during which a vast majority of Jews are going to die. So it's something that I think is imposed on the Scripture, and it's an imposition that is relatively new in Christian history. It's a 19th century idea that arose about the time of Darwin by a disillusioned priest named John Nelson Darby. But I don't think there's any biblical basis for it. Now, the fact that it's new doesn't mean it's not true, but I do think it means that we ought to examine it carefully in light of Scripture.
Right. Okay, well, thanks a lot. I appreciate you answering my call.
You got it. It's a very popular notion, and you can hear it preached on Christian radio and Christian television and in pulpits throughout the land, but we shouldn't buy into these new and novel theories uncritically. We ought to test them in light of Scripture. And I think it is particularly egregious that 1 Thessalonians chapter 4 is used as a pretext for this notion, because the passage says nothing whatsoever about a pre-tribulational rapture. It has everything to do with the great and glorious hope of resurrection. As I said earlier in response to a call with respect to Marcus Borg, the resurrection is a central pillar, not only but the central pillar in the Christian faith. And so we shouldn't do anything to diminish passages that have to do with that great and glorious hope of resurrection. Certainly shouldn't co-opt those passages for something that is not directly associated with that great and glorious truth. Paul there is saying he wants us not to grieve like the rest of those who have no hope. Why? Because Christ rose from the dead.